One of the most misunderstood truths about human psychology is that people rarely appreciate what is constantly available. They are naturally drawn toward what feels rare, difficult to obtain, and emotionally unpredictable. This is not because people are cruel or manipulative by nature. It is because the human mind is wired to assign greater value to scarcity than abundance. The moment something becomes endlessly accessible, the brain slowly begins to treat it as ordinary. This principle influences everything from luxury brands and rare collectibles to friendships, relationships, and social status. The less available something appears, the more attention it attracts. Robert Greene often explores this timeless principle by showing that power is not created through constant presence, but through controlled absence. Those who understand this become far more influential than those who desperately seek attention. Think about the people who command the most respect in any room. They are rarely the loudest voices or the ones trying to impress everyone. Instead, they speak only when necessary, reveal only what is useful, and never appear desperate for approval. Their restraint creates intrigue. Others begin to wonder what they are thinking, what they know, and why they are so calm. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological forces in human behavior. When answers are unavailable, the mind instinctively searches for them. This is why selective attention becomes a source of attraction. It leaves space for imagination, and imagination almost always exaggerates value. Many people unknowingly destroy their own influence by making themselves permanently available. They respond to every message within seconds, explain every decision, defend themselves against every criticism, and constantly seek reassurance from others. At first, this may appear kind or friendly, but over time it communicates something entirely different. It signals dependency. It tells people that your emotional state depends on their reactions. Human psychology quickly detects this imbalance. Once people realize they have unlimited access to your attention, they begin to value that attention less. What once felt special becomes expected. Expectations replace appreciation. Scarcity does not mean pretending to be cold or intentionally hurting others. It means understanding the value of your own time and attention. Every person has limited emotional energy. When you give it away without boundaries, you teach people that it has little worth. But when you invest your attention carefully, people recognize that receiving it is meaningful. This principle exists in every successful relationship. Respect grows when both individuals understand that attention is earned through mutual appreciation rather than demanded through constant availability. Notice how people often become more interested when someone pulls back slightly. The conversation that suddenly ends politely leaves a stronger impression than the one that continues endlessly. The individual who quietly leaves the room is remembered longer than the one who constantly tries to remain the center of attention. The absence creates questions, and questions create interest. The human brain dislikes unfinished stories. It seeks closure. When everything is immediately explained, there is nothing left to discover. Mystery disappears, and with it, much of the attraction. This is also why emotionally secure people rarely chase anyone. They understand that genuine connections cannot be forced. The harder someone tries to convince others of their worth, the more they unintentionally communicate insecurity. Confidence works in the opposite direction. It allows silence to exist without panic. It accepts that not everyone needs to approve, reply, or agree. Ironically, this emotional independence often attracts more respect because people sense that the person's identity is not controlled by external validation. History repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. Powerful leaders, respected thinkers, and influential individuals have often mastered the art of measured presence. They were not invisible, nor were they constantly demanding attention. Instead, they appeared with purpose and withdrew with intention. Their words carried weight because they were not spoken carelessly. Their presence felt valuable because it was not available at every moment. This rhythm of appearance and absence created anticipation, and anticipation strengthened influence. There is another important psychological reason scarcity increases value. People are deeply influenced by the fear of loss. Behavioral scientists have consistently observed that individuals react more strongly to losing something than to gaining something of equal value. When your attention is always guaranteed, there is no possibility of loss. But when your time is clearly limited and protected, people become more aware of its importance. They begin to appreciate moments with you because they understand those moments are not unlimited. Ultimately, attraction is rarely created by chasing people. It is created by building a life that is meaningful enough that your attention becomes one of your most valuable assets. When your focus is directed toward growth, purpose, discipline, and self-respect, people naturally recognize that your presence is earned rather than freely scattered. Scarcity is not about playing games. It is about recognizing that the things given without limits often lose their perceived value, while the things protected with wisdom become respected, desired, and remembered. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power in human psychology. Most people believe influence comes from speaking more, explaining every action, defending every criticism, or reacting to every challenge. In reality, the opposite is often true. The individual who remains calm while everyone else is emotionally overwhelmed immediately stands apart. This kind of silence is not weakness, fear, or uncertainty. It is controlled restraint. Robert Greene repeatedly emphasizes that those who master their emotions gain an advantage over those who allow every event to dictate their behavior. A person who cannot control their reactions can easily be manipulated, while someone who chooses when and how to respond becomes difficult to predict. Human beings are emotional creatures. We constantly observe the reactions of others to understand our own position. If someone insults us and we instantly become angry, they learn something valuable. They discover which buttons to press. If someone criticizes us and we immediately defend ourselves, they recognize that our confidence depends on their opinion. Every uncontrolled reaction reveals information about our emotional weaknesses. Silence interrupts this process. It denies other people the emotional feedback they expect. Without that feedback, they lose control over the interaction. Imagine two people facing public criticism. The first immediately argues, raises their voice, explains every detail, and desperately tries to convince everyone they are right. The second listens quietly, says very little, and walks away without appearing disturbed. Which person appears stronger? Most observers naturally gravitate toward the second individual. Even without knowing the facts, they associate emotional control with confidence. This is one of the deepest psychological biases in social behavior. People assume that the person who remains composed possesses greater certainty and inner strength. Silence also creates uncertainty, and uncertainty captures attention. The human brain dislikes unanswered questions. When someone refuses to react in predictable ways, people begin filling the silence with their own assumptions. They wonder what that person is thinking. They question whether they underestimated them. They analyze every expression, every movement, and every word that was not spoken. Ironically, speaking less often causes others to think about you more. Excessive talking removes mystery, while measured silence encourages curiosity. This principle becomes especially powerful during conflict. Many arguments continue because both sides feel compelled to have the last word. Each response fuels another response until emotions replace reason. The individual who calmly refuses to participate often ends the conflict without saying very much at all. Their silence communicates that their peace is more valuable than winning an argument. This does not mean accepting disrespect or avoiding necessary conversations. It means recognizing that not every challenge deserves your attention. Some battles are won simply by refusing to fight them. Another reason silence creates power is that it demonstrates patience. Impulsive people react immediately because they seek emotional relief. Patient people wait because they seek the correct response rather than the fastest one. This difference changes how others perceive them. Leaders, negotiators, and influential individuals often pause before speaking. They consider their words carefully because they understand that every sentence shapes perception. Their silence is not empty, it is deliberate. Every pause increases the importance of what eventually follows. Modern society encourages constant expression. Social media rewards instant opinions, immediate reactions, and endless explanations. People feel pressure to respond to every comment, defend every misunderstanding, and share every emotion. Yet this endless communication often weakens personal influence. When people know exactly what you think every moment of every day, there is little room for curiosity or respect. Those who protect their thoughts and reveal them only when necessary often wiser, calmer, and more self-assured. Silence also strengthens emotional independence. A person who requires constant validation feels compelled to explain themselves. They worry about being misunderstood. They chase approval because they fear rejection. Someone who possesses genuine confidence accepts that not everyone will understand them. They know their value does not depend on universal agreement. This mindset allows them to remain silent without feeling uncomfortable. Their confidence comes from within rather than from the applause of others. Perhaps the greatest strength of silence is that it gives you time to observe. While others are busy speaking, revealing their emotions, and exposing their intentions, the silent person gathers information. They notice patterns, inconsistencies, motivations, and hidden agendas. Knowledge gained through observation often becomes a far greater source of power than words spoken in haste. The individual who listens carefully usually understands the room better than the one who dominates every conversation. In human psychology, the person who controls their emotions controls their image, and the person who controls their image quietly shapes how others respond to them long before a single word is spoken. Human psychology has always been fascinated by mystery. People are naturally attracted to what they cannot completely understand, predict, or possess. The moment everything about a person becomes obvious, curiosity begins to fade. This is why emotional uncertainty has such a powerful effect on human relationships. It is not about manipulating others or playing dishonest games. It is about understanding that people value discovery far more than constant explanation. Robert Greene frequently illustrates that influence grows when you reveal yourself with intention rather than exposing every thought, emotion, and plan at once. The less predictable you become, the more attention people invest in trying to understand you. Most individuals believe attraction comes from proving themselves. They explain their intentions repeatedly, share every detail of their lives, respond to every message immediately, and seek reassurance that others appreciate them. While these behaviors may come from sincerity, they often remove every element of mystery. When someone always knows what you are thinking, how you will react, and where your attention is directed, there is nothing left for the imagination to explore. The human mind becomes accustomed to certainty, and certainty slowly transforms excitement into routine. Predictability may create comfort, but it rarely creates fascination. The human brain has an interesting habit. Whenever information is incomplete, it automatically tries to fill in the missing pieces. Psychologists describe this tendency as our desire for cognitive closure. We dislike unanswered questions because they create mental tension. If someone suddenly becomes less available, responds thoughtfully instead of instantly, or keeps certain aspects of their life private, people begin constructing explanations on their own. They wonder what changed. They question what that person is doing. They replay past conversations searching for clues. Without realizing it, they devote increasing amounts of mental energy to someone who has revealed very little. This is why mystery often becomes more powerful than explanation. Imagine reading a novel where every secret is revealed in the first chapter, there would be little reason to continue reading because nothing remains to discover. Human relationships operate in remarkably similar ways. Every meaningful connection grows through gradual discovery. Each conversation reveals another layer. Each experience uncovers another perspective. When everything is exposed immediately, the journey disappears. Curiosity fades because there are no unanswered questions left to explore. Emotional uncertainty also challenges expectations. Most people expect immediate reactions. They expect instant replies, quick emotional responses, and constant availability. When someone calmly breaks these expectations without being disrespectful, they become memorable. Their behavior interrupts predictable social patterns. Instead of reacting impulsively, they respond thoughtfully. Instead of chasing attention, they remain focused on their own priorities. Instead of explaining every decision, they allow their actions to speak. This quiet confidence creates an impression of emotional stability that many people find deeply attractive. It is important to understand that emotional uncertainty is very different from manipulation. Manipulation intentionally creates confusion to control another person's emotions. Genuine mystery comes from having a rich inner life that does not depend on external validation. A person who is genuinely busy pursuing meaningful goals naturally becomes less predictable because their attention is directed toward growth rather than constant social approval. Their independence creates space between themselves and others, and that space often increases respect rather than reducing it. There is another psychological reason uncertainty captures attention. Human beings remember unfinished experiences more vividly than completed ones. An unanswered conversation, an unexpected silence, or an unresolved interaction often stays in the mind for days. People replay the moment repeatedly because the brain seeks resolution. This explains why someone who always leaves a conversation at the right moment is often remembered longer than someone who talks endlessly. Ending interactions with purpose leaves room for anticipation. People begin looking forward to the next encounter because the previous one never felt completely exhausted. Those who constantly seek validation usually remove all uncertainty from their behavior. They make their affection obvious, their intentions unmistakable, and their availability unlimited. While honesty is valuable, excessive transparency can unintentionally reduce perceived value. When people know they never have to wonder about your attention, they often stop appreciating it. Scarcity, mystery, and emotional independence work together to remind others that your presence is meaningful because it is not given without thought. The strongest form of attraction does not come from pretending to be distant. It comes from becoming deeply engaged in your own purpose. When your life is filled with meaningful work, personal growth, discipline, and genuine ambition, your attention naturally becomes selective. You stop feeling the need to explain every choice or seek constant approval. Others notice this quiet confidence because it cannot be manufactured through tricks. It is the result of inner stability. People become curious not because you are hiding yourself, but because your actions reveal depth that words cannot fully explain. In human psychology, curiosity is often stronger than certainty, and the person who leaves room for discovery remains far more memorable than the person who reveals everything at once. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that every act of disrespect deserves an immediate response. Human nature pushes us toward defending ourselves the moment we feel attacked. An insult feels personal. A harsh comment feels like a challenge to our worth. A rumor makes us want to explain ourselves. Yet psychology reveals something surprising. Every time you react emotionally to disrespect, you hand the other person exactly what they wanted, your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable forms of social currency, and those who provoke others often seek nothing more than an emotional reaction. Robert Greene frequently emphasizes that true power belongs to the person who controls their emotions, not the person who wins the loudest argument. Ignoring unnecessary disrespect is not a sign of weakness. It is a demonstration that your self-worth is too stable to be dictated by someone else's opinion. Most disrespect is designed to create an emotional response. Whether it happens in the workplace, among friends, or on social media, the individual showing disrespect is often testing your emotional limits. They want to know whether they can influence your mood, interrupt your focus, or force you into defending yourself. The moment you become angry, raise your voice, or begin explaining yourself, they receive confirmation that they have power over your emotions. Without realizing it, you have allowed another person to control your behavior. This is why emotional discipline is so valuable. When someone fails to get the reaction they expected, they often lose interest because the reward they were seeking never arrives. Imagine a person who constantly criticizes others. They insult people, hoping to start arguments and create drama. Most individuals immediately respond, and the conflict continues for hours or even days. Now imagine someone who simply listens, remains calm, and continues with their work without offering an emotional response. The critic suddenly faces silence instead of resistance. That silence becomes uncomfortable because there is nothing left to fight against. The attempt to provoke has failed. In many situations, ignoring disrespect quietly ends conflicts that arguments only prolong. This does not mean allowing people to abuse or mistreat you indefinitely. There is an important difference between ignoring meaningless provocations and accepting genuine injustice. When someone's behavior repeatedly violates your boundaries, the strongest response is often calm action rather than emotional confrontation. You may choose to leave the relationship, report inappropriate behavior, reduce contact, or clearly state your limits without anger. Strength is not measured by how loudly you respond. It is measured by how effectively you protect your peace while maintaining your dignity. Human psychology naturally associates emotional control with confidence. When observers witness two people in conflict, they often pay less attention to who is technically correct and more attention to who remains composed. The individual who stays calm appears more secure, while the person who loses control often appears defensive, even if their argument is valid. This perception influences leadership, business, friendships, and personal relationships. People trust those who remain steady under pressure because emotional stability suggests inner confidence and sound judgment. Ignoring disrespect also protects something far more valuable than reputation: your focus. Every unnecessary argument consumes time, emotional energy, and mental clarity. Hours spent replaying insults or planning clever responses are hours taken away from your personal goals, your family, your work, and your growth. Many successful people understand that their greatest resource is not intelligence or talent, but attention. They refuse to waste it on individuals who contribute nothing meaningful to their lives. By refusing to engage with every source of negativity, they preserve the energy needed to build something worthwhile. Another psychological effect of ignoring disrespect is that it changes the balance of power. Many people expect predictable reactions. They assume an insult will produce anger, that criticism will trigger defensiveness, or that rejection will lead desperation. When those expectations are broken, uncertainty appears. The other person begins questioning whether their opinion truly mattered. They may even reconsider their own behavior because the anticipated conflict never occurred. Your silence forces them to confront themselves instead of distracting them with your reaction. There is also a deeper lesson hidden within this principle. People who constantly defend themselves often seek approval they have not yet given themselves. When your confidence depends on convincing everyone that you are worthy, every criticism feels like a threat. But when your identity is rooted in your own values, discipline, and character, the opinions of others lose much of their emotional weight. You no longer feel compelled to answer every accusation or correct every misunderstanding. You recognize that Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts or your emotional energy. Ultimately, ignoring disrespect is about choosing your battles with wisdom rather than emotion. It means understanding that your attention is limited and should be invested where it creates growth instead of conflict. Every moment you refuse to be pulled into unnecessary drama strengthens your self-control. Every unnecessary argument you avoid protects your peace. Every calm decision you make instead of an emotional reaction reinforces the image of someone who cannot be easily manipulated. In human psychology, the person who remains composed in the face of disrespect often earns more respect than the person who desperately fights to defend it. One of the strongest qualities a person can develop is emotional independence. Human psychology is naturally drawn to individuals who appear complete within themselves, rather than those who constantly seek approval, reassurance, or validation from others. When you become emotionally dependent on another person's attention, your behavior begins to change without you even noticing. You check your phone repeatedly, overanalyze delayed replies, worry about how others perceive you, and adjust your actions simply to gain acceptance. Robert Greene often points out that real influence begins the moment you stop needing everyone to like you. The less desperate you are for approval, the more confident and attractive you naturally become. People often confuse detachment with indifference, but the two are completely different. Indifference means you no longer care about anyone or anything. Detachment, on the other hand, means you care without becoming emotionally controlled by the outcome. You can value relationships while still maintaining your identity. You can appreciate someone's presence without making your happiness depend entirely on them. This balance creates a quiet confidence that people immediately notice because it is rare in a world where many individuals seek constant validation. When someone has genuine emotional independence, they make decisions based on principles instead of fear. They are not afraid to say no when necessary. They do not abandon their values simply to fit in with a crowd. They are comfortable spending time alone because they understand that solitude is an opportunity for growth rather than a sign of loneliness. This mindset sends a powerful psychological message. It tells others that your attention cannot be bought through temporary approval or manipulated through emotional pressure. People are naturally attracted to those who have purpose. A person who is focused on meaningful goals, personal discipline, and continuous self-improvement appears more valuable than someone whose entire world revolves around pleasing others. When your life is driven by purpose, your conversations become richer, your confidence becomes more authentic, and your energy reflects direction rather than neediness. Others begin to respect you because they recognize that your identity is built on something deeper than social acceptance. Detachment also protects you from emotional manipulation. There will always be people who use praise to influence your decisions or criticism to weaken your confidence. If your emotions depend entirely on what others say, you become easy to control. However, when your self-worth comes from your own actions and character, compliments become pleasant but unnecessary, and criticism becomes information rather than a personal attack. This emotional stability makes you difficult to manipulate because your reactions are guided by reason instead of impulse. The paradox of human psychology is that people often become more interested in those who are not desperately trying to gain their attention. When you stop chasing validation and begin investing your energy into becoming a stronger, wiser, and more disciplined person, you naturally project confidence. That confidence does not come from pretending to be distant or superior. It comes from knowing that your value exists whether or not everyone recognizes it. This quiet sense of self is what gives emotional independence its lasting influence and makes genuine confidence far more attractive than constant approval seeking. Attention is one of the most valuable resources a human being possesses. Unlike money, status, or material possessions, attention can never be recovered once it has been wasted. Every moment you spend thinking about someone, reacting to unnecessary drama, or seeking approval from people who do not value you is a moment taken away from your own growth. Human psychology reveals that the person who controls their attention often controls the direction of their life and the quality of their relationships. Robert Greene repeatedly emphasizes that power begins with self-mastery, and self-mastery starts by deciding where your focus belongs. Those who guard their attention carefully become more respected because they refuse to let others dictate their emotions or priorities. Most people give away their attention without realizing it. They constantly check messages, react to criticism, compare themselves with others, and allow every opinion to influence their mood. Gradually, they lose control over their own minds because their emotional state depends on external events. In contrast, emotionally disciplined individuals choose their focus deliberately. They invest their energy in learning new skills, improving their character, building meaningful relationships, and pursuing long-term goals. This difference may seem small at first, but over time it creates entirely different lives. Relationships also reflect this principle. When you give your complete attention to everyone equally, your presence loses its value. But when your attention is thoughtful, intentional, and given to people who genuinely respect and appreciate you, it becomes meaningful. Others recognize that your time is limited and your focus is earned rather than freely scattered. This naturally increases respect because people value what is given with purpose instead of what is available without limits. The greatest form of attraction is not created by chasing people, but by becoming deeply engaged in building a meaningful life. When your attention is directed toward discipline, purpose, knowledge, and self-respect, you stop seeking constant validation from others. Ironically, this is often the moment people begin noticing you more. They see someone who is calm, focused, and emotionally secure. In human psychology, the individual who masters their own attention becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to distract, and ultimately far more influential than the person who spends every day chasing the attention of everyone else.